I'd like to introduce our speaker, Officer Andrew McKnight. He's with the Iowa City Police Department, and he holds BS and MA degrees from the University of Iowa, and he serves as a lead instructor for crisis intervention training in Johnson County, and that's what he's here to talk about today. Data collected by the Washington Post found that actually the group of people who have the most violent encounters with police are people with mental illnesses. And from what little I know of crisis intervention training, one of the things that it was designed to do is to help decrease some of that. But Andrew is the expert, and he's going to tell you more about it. And afterwards, he will be happy to take questions. And he told me outside that he's happy to answer questions both about crisis intervention training and anything else police-related that you might want to know. So please give a big round of applause for Andrew McKnight.
I am very much a wanderer, and so I apologize for that. If you're going to record, you're probably going to be following me around the room. I'm so used to standing up at a podium with a PowerPoint thing, and when I was given the choice to do some PowerPoint stuff or just come and talk, I'm thinking, I'm just coming and talking because I don't normally get to do that. So, first thing is to thank Laura and the board for having me here and for asking me to come and do this. I really appreciate any opportunity to come and talk about CIT, crisis intervention training, or crisis intervention team training is what CIT stands for. I think it's a very, very important program. It's a very valuable program to our community, to our state, to our country, and it's something that I subscribe to, that I buy into. And so today I want to tell you just a little bit about what that is, what it means to me, the value of CIT in our community, and just a little bit about the training that goes on for law enforcement in our area and in the state in general. And then open up some questions about CIT. And then, as I mentioned to Laura, I really value these opportunities. It's rare that we get to sort of sit down and talk a little bit about law enforcement and policing. And I know there's a lot of hot button topics about policing right now. And I'm not an expert in those areas. I'm just a cop trying to make my way through life here in Iowa City in a very tough job. But if I can answer any questions that you have or give you a perspective, I'm happy to do that. So don't feel shy about asking questions, even if those questions at times sound like a little weird, a little difficult. I don't get offended easily. So a little bit about me. All that stuff that Laura said is true in my bio, but I'm also a father. I have two wonderful children. Cameron is 14, a 14-year-old boy, and Kira, who is 11. I am not a career police officer, despite the lines in the side of my eyes, and I came late to be a police officer. There's lots of reasons for that I won't go into, but I moved here in 1994 from Glasgow, just outside Glasgow actually, hence the accent, and I spent up until 2010 in working for a non-profit organisation in the world of youth sport, which people wonder why I'm pretty good at de-escalating things. Well, I have to deal with soccer parents complaining about playing time, and if you can de-escalate someone concerned about their the playing time that their kids are getting, if you can do that, you can do pretty much anything, I think. But all seriousness, what I'm really trying to do is just sort of paint this picture, which is really a true representation of me. Being a police officer is just one facet of who I am. I enjoy my work. I get frustrated with my work. My work is tragic sometimes. But I am very much more than just a guy who is a law enforcement officer from the United States. In 1994, I moved here. I worked for several soccer organizations as a coach. Obtained my AA coaching license, which was quite difficult to get over a period of 10 years. And really spent a lot of time working with area youth. Worked for the State Soccer Association for a while, which was in charge of 37,000 players at one point, and their parents and families. And so my passion, obviously, youth sport, coaching, things like that. That's essentially kind of who I am. So, but when I became a police officer, and there was a note came through email, and it said, there's a program out of San Antonio, Texas called Crisis Intervention, and we're looking for officers who want to go down there and be trained to educate others in the field of crisis intervention. I thought, I wonder what that's all about. Let's go down and see what that is. So I read the thing, and it said, you know, it's an opportunity to go and learn how to improve your communication as it relates to dealing with individuals who are in crisis, and specifically how it relates to dealing with individuals who are experiencing mental illness or different forms of mental illness and find themselves in really difficult predicaments. Without going into it, I think everybody knows, or maybe you don't, but mental health in Iowa, we are, as a state, failing our individuals who are dealing with mental illness. Iowa currently ranks at the bottom. We are 50, number 50 in states as it relates to how we deal with individuals with mental illness. Now, I can see people are puzzled by that, because in Johnson County we are actually very, very good at dealing with individuals with mental illness as it relates to the other counties across our state. But the problem is essentially, and I know this is going to sound bad, but we're kind of the best of a bad bunch is what we're really saying. I recognise that's not very politically correct, and it's not an indictment on any one person, one organisation, one group, but to set the table here, we are failing our citizens in how we treat them and how we deal with them. And so what occurs is law enforcement find themselves being kind of all things to all people. You know, so we find ourselves dealing more and more with individuals who are in crisis, who are experiencing mental illness. And what CIT does, Crisis Intervention Team Training does, is it trains officers to better understand what's going on in individuals' lives based on different particular diagnoses. And it provides, and this is my understanding of what I think CIT is, it's essentially a framework of communication about how law enforcement officers can communicate with people with mental illness, particularly people who are in crisis. And the training puts more meat on the law enforcement bones about what options are available to help a particular person. It used to be, and some of you may think it still is, a very much you roll up on a call and someone is particularly violent, and all of a sudden they're at gunpoint, then they're on the ground, then they've got 6 or 7 people on top of them, then they're getting cuffed and stuffed in the car, taken to jail because they broke the law. They go to jails, and jails become the de facto mental health institutions in our state and in our country, and that's essentially kind of where we're at. So what Crisis Intervention Team Training does is it provides an opportunity for law enforcement officers to be trained in areas where we can have the better, stronger likelihood of having an outcome that's more favourable for the person experiencing mental illness and more favourable for the law enforcement officer. So, to give you an example of that, the training that law enforcement are going through, they're being trained in topics such as active listening topics, how to listen to really what's being said. You know, someone says to me, so I say, so are you taking any medication? And they say medications are evil. What does that really mean? What does that tell you? It tells me they're not taking any, right? Training officers to have a better understanding of how to control themselves during the encounter, how to slow things down, how to approach someone who's in crisis so that they don't get ramped up, how to bring people from a state where they're agitated and bring it down, and just to generally find a way of resolving whatever situation we have in front of us without the need for increased force or de-escalation violence or things like that. So when you hear me talk about crisis intervention team training, it's a collaborative effort amongst multiple agencies and groups to better understand how to address individuals in crisis, and particularly individuals who are dealing with mental illness. So that's kind of what I want you to keep in the back of your mind as I go through this. The training talks about what are some of the traits that we want our officers to have And the interesting thing about this is the traits that we mention are things that we're kind of duh, yeah, everybody should have that, right? We talk about law enforcement officers being creative and being adaptable, and I can see everybody sitting there thinking, well, yeah, that would be important, you know. But the reality is, what does creativity and adaptability really mean? I'll give you an example. But before I get to that example, I want to talk just a little bit about statistics here. We are trained to a very high standard as it relates to preparing for a potentially deadly encounter. Okay? So we receive a lot of weapons training, a lot of tactics training, and things like that. And I call that training for the 2% or the 1%ers. Right? Training for the encounter, because it's a reality that there are people out there that are hell-bent on doing harm. That's my reality. I'm not making this up. I'll give an example without discussing the ins and outs of the case. I have worked 4 days now in a row in my job, 3 12 11s. 4 gun calls in a row. In your city. Okay? Now, that's my reality. So I have to, in terms of keeping me safe in my job, I have to be prepared for the 2% or the 1.5% of the encounters over a 30-year career where I may be asked to utilize deadly force. So the preparation for that is, for me, as a law enforcement officer, important. But crisis intervention and the mindset that goes with crisis intervention is geared towards preparing us for the other 90% of encounters that we have. And acknowledging that it's extremely important that we understand how to deal with the 98% of the encounters that we're going to have across a lifetime without sacrificing the fact that, yeah, you still have to keep yourself tactically safe. So I always look at that sort of, people refer to that as the sort of guardian versus warrior mentality. It's hard because, you know, people talk about the warrior mentality and sort of, it sounds a little brutal at times, and it kind of is. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. My opinion is that it is. To think about the unthinkable. But my job is to understand the what ifs. What might happen if I do this? What might happen if I stand here? What might happen? And one of the things that's difficult for people to understand in crisis intervention training is that for me to build rapport with someone, which is what you want to do in an encounter, I am always giving up something tactically. I'm making myself less safe by simple little things. For example, if I'm at a call and I know that you have mental illness, sir, and I know that you're dealing with schizophrenia or something, and you're out talking, I say, hey, what's your name, sir?
Aaron.
Aaron?
Yeah.
I say, hey, Aaron, I'm just here to talk to you. Would you mind talking to me for a second? Can we just talk about this? You know, my name's Andrew. This is building rapport, but this is a tactical compromise that I have made. Okay? Crisis intervention says we want to make those tactical compromises, but recognize that they are compromises and recognize that your situation has now changed. So the reason I tell you that is because it's kind of complex. It's not as easy as, you know, it seems easy on the surface, but when we start to talk a little bit about how you build rapport and what you're giving up as a law enforcement officer, I hope that you understand that. So anyway, 98%, 2%, guardian versus warrior mentality, and CITs acknowledging that we can be more safe as officers by communicating well, by actively listening, by having an empathy towards the individual or individuals that are dealing with crisis, by understanding a little bit about what their particular form of mental illness is, and then trying creative ways to be able to bring people down, to de-escalate people, to get people to comply in a way that keeps them safe, keeps me safe, and brings about a more favourable outcome, more favourable resolution. Frankly, I think that's what our community wants. I think our community wants that. So we have decreased agency liability because of our ability to communicate better. We have other benefits. officers have less hands-on encounters with individuals. Therefore, individuals are safer, less likely to be hurt. Officers less likely to be hurt. You know, all the benefits that go with that. So these are all things that CIT, being an effective CIT officer, I think all the positives that are going to be brought around by that. Questions so far about CIT, the mindset, kind of what it is. Okay, so what does CIT look like in practice? Well, I'll tell you a story. I went to a call, and I knew the call was going on. The individual was suffering from schizophrenia. I roll up in my car, and this person's already out. He doesn't have a shirt on. He's locked eyes on my car the moment I roll up, and I get out of my car, and he's swearing and pointing and yelling, and really quite aggressive, quite volatile situation. So I recall his name as being Justin from a previous call I was on. So I kind of get out of my car and I say, "Hey Justin, it's Andrew." "Who?" "It's Andrew." "Who's Andrew?" I said, "That's that guy with the funny accent. You must remember me, Justin." "Oh yeah, I remember you." So automatically, first encounter, he's gone from, "You're not here," and now he's here. Okay? I'm still concerned because I am dealing with a young fella who has the capacity for violence that he's shown in the past. So I'm still being careful, but I'm like, "What's going on, Justin? Talk to me. What's the deal?" And I'll leave out the swear words, but he said, basically the arguments with the roommate, he wants the TV, the roommate wants the TV, you know, things that, again, it's his crisis. We might be sitting here thinking, well, that's kind of silly, right? Well, it's his crisis at that point is an argument with the roommate and the TV. It's a big deal to him. So I can't just say, "Oh, come on, it's just a TV, Justin." I'm going, "You know what, Justin, if I wanted to watch the ball game on a TV and someone would want to do it, I'd be kind of annoyed with that too." All of a sudden I can see the air coming out a little bit, you know, he's still pacing, but he's a little bit more compliant. Things are going well, right? I think. He says, "Well, I'm just not happy with him, you know, and he does this all the time, and, you know, I just want to watch this ball game, and, you know." I said, "Well, is he there?" He said, "No, he left." He's already, so I'm thinking, "You left?" He said, but you can't say that because, again, his crisis, he's not thinking clearly, he's not thinking like you or I. And my training in crisis intervention tells me that he's dealing with a particular form of mental illness that makes it difficult for him to cope. So, how do I guide, and again, this is part of CIT, right? How do I guide Justin through this particular crisis? And how do I keep myself safe doing so? So everything's going well, he's calmed down to a point. He says, "I just want to smoke. Can I get a smoke?" Normally I keep some cigarettes in my car. I don't smoke, but it's not something I like people to do. But hey, you smoke, it helps you stay calm. Well, my cigarettes are in the apartment, he says. "Can I go get them?" So I said, "Yep, you can." So we've taken a violent offender who is dealing with mental illness from being up here, and now we're kind of want to say we're communicating, we're talking. I'm not that worried about him at this point. He's not that worried about me. I'm not really a threat. Everything's going great. You guys on board with this?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. So we de-escalate. My training, right? Once he wants to get back into his apartment, I'm trained not to break contact with him. Okay. For lots of reasons. I don't know what he's got in his apartment. You know. I don't know what his real intent is, and again, remember, we are dealing with someone that doesn't think that you're right, someone who's dealing with their own issues. So I said, "Yeah, come on, let's go get a cigarette." So he opens up the door to his apartment, which opens up into his kitchen. Okay? And I always say, "Yeah, may I step in?" Because it's their apartment. "Yeah, please." So I step in. So picture the scene. I'm in a really, really small apartment. The door opens up into the kitchen. And I step into the kitchen. Justin's over maybe 5 feet from me. And there's a big, giant pizza. I love pizza. Anyone else love pizza? But what's next to the big, giant pizza? What do you think? Who wants to say it?
Knife.
Yeah. A knife about this size. It's got I'm a fisherman. Maybe this size, right? A big knife, right? Now, this is where the CIT training really kicks in, because I am 4.5 feet away from a person who is known to be violent, a person who is dealing with mental illness, confirmed schizophrenia, a person who moments earlier was involved in an altercation with a roommate, and I'm 4.5 feet away from a guy standing next to a really big knife. What do you think happened next? I'm not making this up. What do you think happened next? I'll show you. Picture the scene. That's what happened. Not with a ladle. A ladle would have been fine.
The question is, which one of you picked up the knife?
He picked up a... Good question. He picked up the knife.
Did he ask you if you wanted pizza?
You would... Good question. He picked up the knife and he turned, just as I did there. He stopped, he looked at the knife, and he looked at me. Now my question for you, before I tell you how this all ended, is how should I feel about that? Forget about the Iowa Code and how close someone has to be before you're legally able to kill them. Forget about that. How should I feel standing 4.5 feet away from a known, violent person who has mental illness, who may or may not want to do me harm? How should I feel about that?
Scared, nervous.
Scared, nervous,
I'd be angry,
angry?
because I've been trying to like help this guy, and
Yeah, you try to help the guy and then you're just like... And so CIT training teaches us, and this is really important, this is why I tell this particular story, because I would have been perfectly within my rights. I need you to put that down. I need you to put that knife down. 4.5 feet. Who thinks I can be killed quickly 4.5 feet with a knife? Anyone? Okay. So, my training tells me I'm okay, I can do that. So that's an option. My role in CIT, and I like to think in the sort of natural style, or the natural things that I do naturally, I like to think they came into effect. I went, Justin, I know you're not going to harm me, but that knife makes me uncomfortable. Can you put it down so we can get smoke? He looks at the knife and he, oh, yeah, sorry. Puts it down, gets a smoke, we go outside, crisis averted, no issue, Justin's fine. I've built some capital with Justin for the next time. But I guess the reason I tell this story is because, you know, it's kind of an important story and it gives everybody a perspective that maybe you hadn't thought of. You know, it's like, how are we, because we're people, right? Police officers, we're not robots, right? How am I meant to keep my emotions in check? What do you think was going on in my heart there? Yeah, it's like feeling I'm running a marathon, right? But I'm supposed to keep my emotions in check. I'm supposed to assess this, scan the situation, assess the situation, decide what I'm going to do in a split second and deal with that issue. Well, guess what, folks? You know, CIT training, the training that I've had, about telling me to control the controllables, to control me first, to trust on the skills that we have, the skills that we develop. CIT, in that particular encounter, extremely valuable to keeping me safe, extremely valuable to keeping that individual safe, extremely valuable in allowing him to go about his business and even allowing me to go home, you know. Not rocket science, but not easy. Not easy, because it's kind of a volatile situation. And so CIT training allows officers to work on those skills and to take advantage of opportunities to utilize new communication points that they learn in the classroom through role play and intensive role play and various lectures throughout the week. The course itself, the CIT course, Iowa right now offers 3 40-hour courses per year. That translates into training, I don't want to misspeak, but maybe 70 law enforcement officers from Iowa in each course. So we're doing the third one in October, and that'll be in excess of 200 officers in our local area first, trained in CIT. And again, that course is broken down into lectures like active listening, introduction to mental illness, where we go over a little bit about the pharmacology, a little bit about the type of medications that people have. Because think about it, I can now go to a call and someone comes up to me and says, I'm just not feeling like myself. And I'll be, I'm really sorry to hear that. How do you feel? Well, I just feel tired all the time, and I haven't been going to my youth group that I usually go to, and things are kind of tough at home. Things are tough at home. You know, using the last two words, it's things are tough at home. Yeah, you know, and then just knowing, having the wisdom to shut up and just listen, and then figure out what this person needs, which resources they need, where can I direct this person to get the help they need? Is this person suicidal? Is this person going to harm themselves? Is this person going to kill themselves? Because that's what we're talking about, right? You don't want to walk up to someone and say, are you thinking of hurting yourself? Because they're already in pain. It's not about hurting yourself, it's about killing yourself. Right? But what CIT does is it allows you to sort of sift through and listen and poke and prod and hopefully do it in a skillful way that gives you an opportunity to find out what's going on so that you can redirect people to the appropriate resources and the appropriate help. So, law enforcement officers come in, they spend 40 hours going through into the mental illness. We bring in experts in the field of ACEs. You guys heard of ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experience? We do lectures on that. We bring in people from groups with adults and kids who are dealing with particular disabilities, autism, things like that. And we put all this stuff together, and every evening we offer role play activities where we bring in actual actors and we set up scenarios for officers to work through. And the scenarios are tough. They're tough. Every law enforcement officer will tell you, I hate doing role play, because normally what we end up doing is we're doing role play for our peers. So I become the actor and someone else. But it's not like this. This is people come in sometimes from the acting community, sometimes from NAMI or from other mental health agencies come in and we'll act out these scenarios. And it's really interesting to see how stressful that can be for the officers as they're looking to learn the best way of communicating. So communication framework, as I mentioned, but it's not all about, did you have a question? I thought
Well, I do, but I didn't know I raised my hand. But,
I must just have been a Jedi mind.
It must be. So this is fascinating to me. I wonder if you can be, is there a checklist that goes through your mind when you come out to see someone? And also, do you consider what respiration and other physical characteristics you can pick up on to try to see if they're in a really stressed state?
Great question. Yeah, well, if I'm understanding your question correctly, there's a number of different things that you have to assess when you arrive on scene. And obviously the dispatcher is going to have given you an idea as to maybe what's going on. I say maybe because dispatchers will type and report what they're being told or what they think they're hearing. And the dispatch does a great job that I work with. But the reality is I can't be misled into thinking a call is going to be a certain thing and then show up and discover that it's not. So I look at the call and I look at what's being said and I have a plan based on what's been said, but that's where that creative adaptability part comes in, because the reality is that I may have to change and be adaptable based on what I'm seeing. But to speak to your question, if someone is really amped up and pacing up and down, okay, an old way of thinking, maybe I shouldn't phrase it that way, but that's the only way I can articulate it right now. The old way of thinking, a police officer thinks this is a form of aggression. Hey, I need you to stand still. Who's heard that? Who sees that on TV? I need you to stop walking, I need you to stand still. Well, guess what? I think that coping, this is also coping, right? So I have to discern straight away on scene, is this person agitated and moving around like that because they're sizing me up, or is it because this is how they cope with whatever's going on? So okay, so let's say they're pacing and I've determined it's a coping thing. So I'm thinking, I can let them pace, that's not going to make me any less safe. Then you start getting to the crux of, why are we here? And, so asking open-ended questions and really listen to what those answers are. Hey, I see you're pacing up and down. I'm okay with that. If that makes you feel better, I'm really okay with that. Go ahead and pace away. It's not a problem for me. So you're already setting the table that whilst I know I'm there to try and control this situation, I'm flipping it back and giving this person an element of control of what's going on. right? Because someone who feels they have no control of their life certainly doesn't want to have an encounter with someone who's trying to control their facet what they're doing. So, taking a step back and hey, I'm totally okay. Hey, I'm Andrew. What can I call you? Sometimes I don't say what's your name. What would you like me to call you? You know, because sometimes you say what's your name. I don't want to give you my name. So, hey, what can I call you? And they might say, well, don't want you to call me? And I say, well, you know, hey partner, I'm just here. I just want to know what you want to call me. You can call me Steve. All right. Okay, Steve. Well, even if you can get to that part, then I start to notice that Steve isn't pacing quite so much. So I'm thinking, okay, now there's a communication piece. I feel bad, my back's always Steve. Now there's a communication piece at least. And then I can start getting into questions of orientation. You know, hey, Steve, you know, I know you're pacing around, and I know you mentioned a few minutes ago that life just hasn't been going well for you. I don't know what it's like to be you, but I'd like to take a shot at maybe helping you if I can. Again, I'm not saying, hey, I understand. I don't understand. I'm not coming in saying, hey, you need to calm down. Who likes to be told to calm down? Anybody here likes to be told to calm down? I mean, what do we do when someone says calm down? Calm down? Calm down. So, but you know what, as officers, right, and as people, we have to eradicate these things from our vocabulary, right? We have to unlearn things. Anyhow, then we get to the point where we're communicating, and I start looking at, you know, you talk about the physiological aspect, you know, yeah, I'm paying attention to that. Is the person sweating? Is the person, what's the respiration rate? Like, one of the things I pay attention to is the pressured speech. Am I hearing pressured speech patterns that I know are related with particular forms of mental illness, whether it's manic depressive or bipolar or things like that? But you know what, maybe I say, hey, you know, when's the last time you ate? Once I've got them, well, I haven't eaten anything all day. Maybe it's 8 o'clock at night, I haven't eaten anything all day, you know? Now, I'm not looking for you to pin a rose on me. This isn't what this is about. But I might have my covering unit, my second unit. I say, hey, partner, nip into the bread garden and get me a sandwich. What do you want, Steve? Turkey, ham, what do you want? Do you get me a sandwich? Yeah, what do you want? So he goes, gets Steve a sandwich. He starts eating the sandwich. All of a sudden he's getting carbs inside him. Maybe 15 minutes later, increases his dopamine levels, right? Everybody, you know, starts to feel a little bit more, oh, I'm kind of feeling all right now, you know? Just a simple act of time. Which is another thing about crisis intervention, and that is that we're telling law enforcement officers that whenever possible, let's not put a running clock in solving the problem. We're not there to solve their problems, we're there to mitigate the issue and bring around a resolution and find the resources that each individual person needs in order to have a shot at having a successful life. Now,
Well, that's the point. Where are the resources? Iowa doesn't have the resources
fabulous
to
point.
deal with that.
So, right now, and that's absolutely, when I started the presentation, we talked about how we're failing in terms of how we deal with this particular population. It is true that the resources that we have are inadequate. We have resources, but they're not adequate. I know where I can send someone to have medication stabilization that would be free for them. I know where to send someone where they can get free counselling services. I know where I can send someone who's suicidal and can have someone to talk to 24/7. I can do all those things. But the crux of your question is, where do these people go? Johnson County, and I don't get into this too much when I do these because I'm not in on the stakeholder meetings about this particular topic, so I can't provide much meat on the bones. But I can tell you that there are stakeholders who meet on a regular basis to discuss and to create a plan for the building of an access centre that would essentially, and this is where I kind of get myself in trouble because I don't want to speak of things I don't know, but it would essentially be a centre, at least in concept and theory, where it would have a low barrier shelter, it would have access to mental health facilities, it would have a detox area, it would have all these different things. And I can tell you that it's gone further than just the discussion side of things. People are looking at sites and costing and all that sort of stuff. the Board of Supervisors are involved, there's lots of stakeholders. You may have heard of this, but there is a movement to build or to occupy an existing structure that would provide more options for people, and certainly more options. So that's one of the frustrations we have as a law enforcement officer too. So okay, I know you're a danger to yourself. Now what? Go to the ER, have a lengthy wait. That person then gets admitted. I leave. They do their 2 or 3 days or whatever it is, for 7 days. They're back out in the community. They don't get the help they need. Costs for service continue to creep up because it's just a pitching problem. So I wish I could tell you that, yeah, no, these are all the things. I can tell you that Johnson County are trying very hard to make that a reality, but it's a frustration I have also, because I certainly can't solve that problem. Ma'am, you had a question?
Can you give us a scenario of what would you do if someone was damaging a knife or a gun with really no intention of shooting? Not really trying to shoot you, but they are so upset. Something has happened in the house or something, and they're out there just waving the thing.
I can answer that because I've done that.
Okay.
I've been there. And again, I answer this, you could ask 10 law enforcement officers this and maybe get 10 different answers, okay? But I'll answer this the way I dealt with that particular situation, okay? And you tell me if I don't answer this question to your satisfaction, because you can hold my feet to the fire, I don't mind. I got called to a call where an individual, his house had just been kicked in, and there were 3 individuals that had threatened to assault him. That's the call I got, okay? Now, I happened to be the furthest car away, and it was one of those nights where everybody's doing something, right? So I'm getting that call and I'm thinking, okay, why me? Because I'm on the other side of town, but I'm heading that way. So I'm heading that way, and the notes in the call said the 3 had left the scene, okay? So in my mind, and this goes back to what I said earlier, that sometimes what gets dispatched in my mind, it's a little different. But I leave to go to that scene, expecting in my mind that, okay, well, those 3 have gone. There wasn't any description that was given beyond some markers, race markers, height, weight, stuff like that. So I didn't have clothing descriptions around that. So I'm really unable to search on my way there for the 3 offenders who are assaulting this person. So that's what I've got. So I turn around the corner, and again, I'm telling you exactly how this happened. I'm on my own. It's about, I want to say it's about 11 o'clock at night. I turn the corner, and in my headlights is a male standing in the middle of the road with a knife in each hand. Not pocket knife, kitchen knives in each hand. So, ma'am, what's your name?
Diana.
Diana. So Diana asked the question, how do you deal with that? How do you, well, I chose to get out of the car. My weapon was holstered still, but I unhooked the level of retention that I had. We've got different levels of retention on our weapons, so, but I left it in my holster. I'm standing maybe the doorway. And I'm like, hey, I need you to put the knives down. And I won't tell you what the person said, because it's just F this, F that, F you, right? They came in my house, I mean, he's amped up, you know? He's going, F you, I don't want to, you know. So in my mind, I'm like, I don't really think this guy's really mad at me. He's mad because his crisis, someone has invaded the sanctuary of his home, at least, and I would tell you this as well, at least that's what he's telling me. I don't know who he is. Could be one of the 3, and the guy could be lying dead in the house for all I know. Fair, Diana? Right. But I choose to be, hey, you know what? You need to put that knife down so we can talk. Put the knives down, and then we'll talk. I'm putting shit down, right? And I'm like, and all the while, and I'm being honest with you, there's a house in the background, but there's an open area. So I reposition myself because I'm thinking if I have to shoot this person, I don't want to have a house in the background. What do you think my heart's doing right now? Okay? Now, I had called out the description of the individual and asked for more units. So after about 30 seconds of interaction, other units start to arrive. And rightly so, right? Because I potentially need help. Guy gets out of the car, my backup gets out of his car. And I'm not saying this person's wrong, by the way, I'll make sure we're clear on this. He immediately draws his weapon and draws down on the suspect. Because the suspect has 2 knives. Put the knives down. Other car comes up, another person gets out, weapon drawn, I'm still palms up, we're making sure that we're not in the crossfire of each other. Eventually he throws the knives away. Right? He holsters his weapon, he holsters his weapon. We end up somewhat communicating. I say somewhat because the person's still really amped up. And all of a sudden, it's my fault, you know? Which I get, it's fine, it happens sometimes. He ends up arguing and being belligerent and all that sort of stuff. And wouldn't listen, and we were communicating. And I'm going to be honest with you, Dan, and in this case, he could have gone to jail under the charge of being armed with intent. Didn't want that. I didn't want that, because that's not what this was about. I didn't want him to have to go to jail at all. But the problem is the decisions he made after that, and his actions, made it very, very difficult for us not to. In the end, he was given a citation for disorderly conduct, and then there was obviously an investigation as to what actually occurred that led to that. So that's how I chose to handle that particular situation. I would ask the question, I would flip the question around, I guess, and say, because I appreciate that question because it's a complex question, you know? How close is too close? How close should I allow you to be? I mean, you made the statement, Diana, and I understand it. You know, well, what if someone's just kind of waving a gun around but they don't really have an intention to use it? The question I would say is, what does someone look like who's waving a gun around that doesn't intend to use it? I don't know. I mean, I don't know, and I'm not being flippant or making light of the situation. I'm just telling you, if you guys can tell me what that looks like, I'm all ears. But I just don't know. We take weapons off of 13-year-olds that have had the orange tip removed, and we discover that they are these airsoft guns.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, in low light and in daylight, I can't tell the difference. And so the question is, how, I don't know if I can ask the question in the right way. I mean, how accommodating should I be? How much leeway does a person with a knife get? How close do they allow them to get? And I guess this is what the whole point of CIT is, right? It's about being able to make a series of tactical compromises and still stay safe. Because all through our courses we're saying you never compromise your safety for a rapport. Being safe and going home at the end of the night, and I make no apologies for this, even in a tough political climate. I make no apologies for saying that my priority is to come to work and go home to my family and serve my community and to serve all citizens. And that's my goal when I go to work. And I leave that up to others to judge how well I do it. But that's how I handled that particular call, Diana, and yeah, I think I'm very tolerant.
So we've got time for about 2 more questions.
Oh, sure, so I can talk all day.
That's okay.
Just so we're clear.
Yeah.
I see 2 hands, sir.
What kind of resources are there and what kind of policy is there for dealing with law enforcement people like yourself who have been really in stressful situations, you know, and not where you're under internal investigation,
Mhm.
but, you know, you've uncovered 3 murdered people and you've been at work 4 days in a row. Is there
What's our
policies and resources to take care of your
Great question.
human emotional needs?
It's a great question, and it's the kind of the age-old question amongst officers, and I think every department is how we look after each other and how we help each other get through critical incidents or critical stressful situations. I think is what we're at. And I know that there are organisations that work with certainly our agency that are available for counselling and things like that. I know that depending on, and I can't quote the policy because I need to read it, but depending on the particulars of a particular stressful situation, there are certain things that get triggered. I mean, without even getting into the sort of officer-involved shooting stuff, just if you're in a critical incident situation where someone fires a gun at you or something like that, there are counselling agencies that the department works with. There are chaplain program that work with for those for whom face counselling is important. And there's a peer-to-peer support program that we run throughout the department, and indeed that's run throughout the state, that can help in situations like that. But it's definitely an area that needs to be, I think, improved upon across the state, because I don't think you can ever have enough concern for people who are trying to work within our communities in really abnormal situations. You know? I'm not looking for a medal or anything. That's not what this is about. It's just it's a very fair question, and I would say the resources are there, but sometimes it's not enough, and it's all dependent upon each individual person, right? What they've experienced in the past, what their accumulation is, what they're able to set aside, what they're able to get over, what they're not able to get over. The last question, sir?
Well, with the person waving the gun, so on the other side of the badge, he's perhaps an abusive person himself, mentally ill, a racist, fascist, or whatever. Where do we get counseling?
That's it. It's, you know what, the community, here's the thing. We are living in interesting times. I choose to view the world as, I know the evil that exists in the world. I know the evil that exists in a variety of different communities. I don't walk around blindly or naive, or I make calculated risks every day. We all do, right? We all do. We all have to be guarded as to how we choose to view the world. Actually, I'm a very half-full type of guy. Always have been, always will be. Even allowing for the hardships and tragedies that I deal with at work. But we all have to look after ourselves, I think, by finding communities like this. By finding like-minded people who have the same interests, the same goals, the same belief systems, the same value systems, or similar value systems, that can help us, that can lift us up when we need to be lifted up, that can provide us with a different perspective when that's needed. You know, so as a member of the community, so finding sort of sub-communities within that community to try to ensure that we're all as strong as we can be, I guess. I mean, I don't, again, I'm just a cop who was a coach, you know. I can't answer that with any great academic detail, but looking after each other and in communities such as this is really, really important. Let me tell you, I appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you. There's a whole, we've barely scratched the surface of CIT, you know, but I just wanted to sort of, I hope this was beneficial first off. I hope that I've given honest answers to questions. You can reach out to me anytime you like. I work with a number of different groups. I make myself very available. When the immigration legislation that started to cause all sorts of issues occurred, rather than me just go about my patrol car, I went and met with the neighbourhood centres in Johnson County. I made myself a resource for people so that members of our immigrant communities could understand that the difference between law enforcement action locally and federal, and how different those things were, and you know, and how we're not going to come and knock on your door and take you and deport you and things like that. I make myself available when I see an issue, because I'm trying to improve my community. So I'll be available to you if it's helpful. If you ever want a candid conversation or my perspective on something, absolutely happy to provide that. I don't doubt that there'll be a lot that we would agree on, and I don't doubt that there's some things that we would just see a different perspective, maybe just couldn't agree on. It's kind of how the world works. But again, my name is Andrew. I'm the only Scottish guy that works in IoT. It's a blessing and a curse. Who did it? The guy with the accent. I want to thank you all. Diana, I appreciate your question. Appreciate all your questions. And
Andrew, thank you for coming.
my pleasure.
About 12 years ago, I'm a mental health provider and do community-based work. And I'm kind of in the streets working with people with paranoid schizophrenia.
So you know.
I was yesterday and sitting on First Avenue in front of the storefront in Cedar Rapids, helping the guy who's psychotic. And so I really appreciate the work you do. And about 12 years ago, I went to a mental health conference, and a gentleman who was an officer in Philadelphia spoke about CIT. And he was passionate about it. It resonated with him, and it resonated with me.
Right.
And it made sense to me. And actually, a lot of ways, I felt like our team in Cedar Rapids is doing a lot of that. You know, so it made sense to me. And so ever since then, I paid attention kind of to CIT. When something would be on the news or I'd hear a conference, I'd try to attend it or keep myself educated and talk with other people about it too. And when I came back to my team after that conference, I was excited, enthusiastic to share what people are doing in the community. And the gentleman who I listened to, I mean, it's saved lives.
I think it has, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's doing it here too, and it's an incredible community resource. When Laura sent that email, when there was a discussion about you coming and talking with us, I was like, awesome.
Well, good.
Yeah, so.
Well, like I said, I mean, I'm available, and I do take my job seriously. This is my day off. This is how much I care about it. Okay? Saturday, I have 2 kids at home. I need to go do something, But I part of me is raising my kids probably. Hey guys, this is important. This stuff's important. So thank you for sharing that, and it's good. It's good that you can testify that it works. So.
Yeah.
You better get some pie and ice cream though before you go.
I've been trying to, lose a bit of weight, but it's very kind of you to say. Thank you, and thank you again.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you so much for
Now, you won't be offended if I take off.
No.
No.
If you're going to be offended if me taking off, I'm taking off.